Hey guys. I'm back with part 5 of What If Naruto Was Born with the Rinnegan. Hit like and subscribe if you like this one. Let's start. Chapter 18. When Rain Falls. The rain began as a gentle patter against Konoha's rooftops, innocent enough to the untrained observer, but carrying an unmistakable chakra signature that set the village's sensors on high alert. By midday, the precipitation had spread across the entire village, each droplet functioning as both surveillance tool and psychological warning. Pain was watching, and pain was coming. From the highest point in the Hokage Tower, Naruto stood with Tsunade and the defense captains, his Rinnegan perceiving the subtle chakra network forming through the rainfall. Unlike natural rain, these droplets connected to each other in a vast sensory web extending from somewhere beyond the village borders. It's a sensory technique, he confirmed, tracing patterns with his eyes that others couldn't see. He's mapping our defenses, identifying key personnel. Can you disrupt it? Tsunade asked. Not without revealing our countermeasures, Naruto replied. For now, let him see what we want him to see. The strategy they developed over the previous weeks now accelerated into its final phase. Civilians moved quietly into underground shelters disguised as routine drills. ANBU teams established positions along calculated intercept points. At the village's center, a specialized sealing team led by the remains of the Uzumaki clan's diaspora prepared the massive array designed to isolate and counteract Rinnegan abilities. Sasuke approached, water beading on his dark hair. The eastern perimeter teams are in position. The Hyuga clan reports no movement yet within their visual range. They'll come from above, Naruto predicted, remembering Jiraiya's notes on Pain's dramatic entrance style. The rain is just the prelude. As if confirming his assessment, Fu joined them, her expression tense. Chomei senses a disturbance in the air pressure surrounding the village, like the calm before a massive storm. How much time? Tsunade demanded. Hours at most, Fu estimated. Possibly less. Tsunade's decision was immediate. Move to Condition 1. All shinobi to battle stations. Activate the outer barrier seals. As the defensive machinery of Konoha engaged, Naruto made a last-minute check of his preparations. The special kunai, modified with his own sealing formula that combined his father's technique with Rinnegan principles, were distributed to key positions throughout the village. His shadow clones had spent the night placing backup seals at strategic locations, creating a network of instant transportation points. In a quiet moment before taking his position, Naruto found Sasuke waiting near the village memorial stone. Second thoughts? Sasuke asked, noting Naruto's contemplative expression. Not about fighting, Naruto clarified. About what comes after. Pain believes he's pursuing peace through his methods. Defeating him militarily won't address the underlying grievances that created Akatsuki. Sasuke considered this, rain dripping from his bangs. You're starting to sound like a Hokage rather than a frontline fighter. Maybe that's what these eyes are pushing me toward, Naruto observed. Seeing the bigger picture instead of just the immediate battle. Their conversation halted as they sensed a sudden fluctuation in the chakra-laden rainfall, a distortion in the air above the village that manifested as rippling waves. It's starting, Sasuke said quietly, activating his Sharingan. Naruto nodded, his Rinnegan shifting to full awareness. Remember the plan. Identify and separate the paths. Don't engage more than one at a time if possible. And the masked one? Sasuke questioned. Tobi? If he appears, he's mine, Naruto stated with unusual firmness. I've prepared something special for his space-time technique. They moved to their assigned positions just as the first thundering explosion rocked the village's outer barrier. The specialized seals flared with brilliant light, absorbing a massive kinetic attack that would have otherwise devastated entire blocks. From his command position atop the Hokage monument, Naruto watched as the air above Konoha distorted, revealing 6 figures descending through the rain, each with orange hair, facial piercings, and the unmistakable concentric rings of the Rinnegan. Pain has arrived, his clone reported simultaneously to Tsunade and the defense captains. 6 paths as expected. Beginning identification protocol. The village's response was immediate and coordinated. Rather than direct confrontation, Konoha's defenders implemented their rehearsed strategy, targeted distraction, identification, and separation of Pain's 6 paths based on their known abilities. Through his Rinnegan, Naruto tracked each path's distinctive chakra signature, correlating them with Jiraiya's intelligence. Deva path in the lead, the one with gravitational abilities. Animal path to the east. Human, Azura, Preta, and Naraka paths spreading through the central district. The first clash came when an ANBU team engaged the animal path, drawing it toward a specialized containment area. The path responded by summoning massive creatures: a rhinoceros, a multi-headed dog, and a bird large enough to shadow entire streets. Each summon bore the same Rinnegan eyes, sharing vision with all 6 paths. Simultaneously, the Azura path, identified by its mechanized body modifications, targeted Konoha's communications infrastructure, launching missiles that the barrier team struggled to neutralize. "They're trying to isolate us from each other," Shikamaru observed from the command center. "Standard divide and conquer strategy, not standard," Naruto corrected, his clones reporting from multiple vantage points. "They're targeting our countermeasures specifically. They know our strategy." This realization prompted an immediate tactical shift. Rather than maintaining their defensive posture, Konoha's forces moved to direct engagement, with specialized teams targeting each path according to their prepared countermeasures. The human path, which extracts souls through physical contact, found itself confronted by Yamato's would-release techniques, keeping it at distance while Hyuga clan members attempted to disrupt its chakra network with precision strikes. The Preta path, capable of absorbing ninjutsu, faced Sasuke and a team of weapons specialists relying purely on physical attacks that couldn't be neutralized by its absorption ability. Throughout the village, carefully orchestrated confrontations unfolded, each designed to isolate and neutralize specific paths while minimizing civilian casualties. Yet the power gap remained evident. Even separated, each path demonstrated abilities far beyond average Jonin level. Naruto, monitoring through his network of clones, recognized that despite their planning, Konoha was absorbing significant damage. The central ceiling array, their ultimate countermeasure, required all 6 paths to be maneuvered into positions simultaneously, a coordination challenge growing more difficult as the battle intensified. "We need to accelerate the timeline," he decided, communicating through his clone network. "The Deva path is holding back," observing. "That's our primary target, the one controlling the others." With this assessment, Naruto himself finally entered the battle directly, using his modified Flying Thunder God technique to appear instantaneously at a marker near where the Deva path hovered above the village center. The confrontation that followed would be recounted in Konoha's history for generations. 2 Rinnegan users facing each other, one born with the legendary dojutsu, the other having acquired it through unknown means. Their initial exchange was cautious, each assessing the other's capabilities. "Naruto Uzumaki," the Deva path acknowledged, its voice eerily calm amid the destruction surrounding them. "The child prophesied to either save or destroy the world, and you're Nagato," Naruto responded. "Or at least his primary path." Jiraiya's former student. Something flickered across the path's impassive features, a brief reaction to hearing both names. Jiraiya understood nothing. He lived in a dream world where talk and understanding could overcome the fundamental hatred that drives the shinobi system, a system you're perpetuating through more violence. Naruto countered, maintaining distance while subtly positioning himself to draw the path toward the prepared sealing ground. "How many more orphans like yourself are you creating today?" The Deva path extended its hand, initiating a gravitational push that Naruto countered with his own Rinnegan's repulsive force. The resulting collision of opposite forces created a spherical vacuum between them, air rushing back with a thunderous clap as their techniques neutralized each other. "Impressive," the path observed. "You've developed considerable control. But experience remains the superior teacher." It launched a more complex gravitational attack, not a simple push or pull, but a series of alternating forces designed to disrupt Naruto's balance and defenses. Despite his training, Naruto found himself struggling against the sophisticated technique. "You possess the eyes but lack the vision," the Deva path continued, advancing methodically. "Peace cannot be achieved through half measures and compromise. The world requires pain to truly change, to understand the cost of its endless conflicts." Naruto created shadow clones that the path dismissed with casual gravitational waves. Yet their purpose wasn't direct combat but positioning, each clone placing additional Flying Thunder God markers and analyzing the path's attack patterns. "And who granted you the authority to determine what the world needs?" Naruto questioned, buying time as he accumulated tactical data. "What makes your pain more significant than anyone else's?" For the first time, emotion tightened the path's features. "I have experienced every kind of loss this corrupt system creates. Parents murdered before my eyes. Friends sacrificed for political gain. Nations destroyed as collateral damage in the great powers' games. What have you lost that compares?" The question struck deeper than intended. Images flashed through Naruto's mind, his parents, whose faces he knew only from photographs, Jiraiya, whose guidance had shaped his understanding of both ninjutsu and purpose, the third Hokage, who had protected him despite the village's fear, enough to understand that inflicting more suffering won't heal what's broken. Naruto answered finally. Jiraiya believed in breaking cycles, not perpetuating them. Jiraiya died a fool's death. The path declared coldly. Still clinging to childish ideals, something shifted in Naruto at these words, not anger, but clarity. He recognized the tactical opening he'd been creating and the philosophical one that had just emerged. If understanding pain is the key, Naruto proposed, his Rinnegan gleaming with purpose, then perhaps I should understand yours directly. Before the Deva path could respond, Naruto executed his modified Flying Thunder God technique, vanishing from sight only to reappear instantly behind the path. Unlike his father's version, which required physical markers, Naruto's modification utilized the Rinnegan's sensory capabilities to lock onto distinctive chakra signatures once identified. In the split-second advantage this granted, Naruto implemented the technique he developed through months of training with the Hyuga clan, a modified gentle fist strike targeting not Tenketsu points but the unique chakra pathway connecting the Deva path to its controller. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The path staggered, its Rinnegan connection momentarily disrupted, creating a cascade effect that rippled through all 6 paths simultaneously. Throughout the village, Pain's bodies faltered in perfect synchronization, a vulnerability window of mere seconds, but enough for Konoha's forces to implement the next phase of their strategy. Now! Naruto commanded through his clone network. Across Konoha, specialized sealing teams activated prepared arrays beneath each path's position, temporarily anchoring them in place through techniques derived from ancient Uzumaki designs. The animal path's summons dissipated as its concentration broke. The Preta path's absorption field collapsed mid-technique. Most significantly, the disruption provided the opening Naruto needed to implement the final component of his strategy, following the chakra connection back to its source. Through the Deva path's eyes, he caught a glimpse of a distant chamber, a withered body connected to a strange mechanical apparatus, and beside it, a blue-haired woman watching with concern. I see you, Nagato, Naruto whispered, establishing a mental bridge through their temporarily linked Rinnegan. I see what you've become. The connection lasted only moments before the Deva path re-established control, breaking free of the sealing array with a massive gravitational pulse that sent Naruto flying backward. Only his reflexive use of the Preta path's absorption ability prevented serious injury as he crashed through several buildings. An impressive attempt, the Deva path acknowledged as it pursued him through the debris. But ultimately futile. Your connection to these eyes is incomplete, born rather than earned through true suffering. Naruto rose from the rubble, blood trickling from his temple but determination undiminished. I saw your real body, Nagato. What happened to you? What transformed Jiraiya's hopeful student into this? For the first time, uncertainty flickered across the path's expression. You saw nothing. It denied, though its attack tempo increased with new urgency. Throughout the village, the other paths adjusted their strategies, focusing more intently on Konoha's sealing specialists, recognizing them as the primary threat to their unified control. The Azura path launched a devastating assault on the central sealing array, sacrificing its defensive capabilities for raw destructive power. The Naraka path, capable of both interrogation and restoration, began systematically reviving damaged paths, prioritizing the animal path to re-establish their summoning capabilities. The human path abandoned its previous targets to intercept Sasuke, who had nearly neutralized the Preta path. They're adapting, Shikamaru reported through the command network. Changing priorities based on what they've learned about our countermeasures. Tsunade's response was immediate. Implement contingency delta. All forces fall back to secondary defensive positions. This pre-planned maneuver appeared as a retreat, but actually repositioned Konoha's defenders around a secondary sealing array hidden beneath the Hokage monument, a more powerful but less precise version of their original countermeasure. As the village's forces executed this strategic repositioning, Naruto found himself in increasingly difficult combat with the Deva path. Despite his extensive training and natural affinity for the Rinnegan, the difference in experience remained evident. The path's techniques demonstrated refinements and nuances he was still discovering, pressuring him toward the monument, though unaware this aligned with Konoha's contingency plan. You fight well, the path acknowledged during a momentary pause in their exchange. But like Jiraiya, you failed to commit fully to your power. The Rinnegan's true potential emerges only when one embraces the divine perspective it offers, seeing humanity from above, not within. That's where you're wrong, Naruto countered, creating strategic distance. These eyes don't elevate us above humanity, they connect us more deeply to it. That's what the sage intended. You speak of intentions you cannot know. The path dismissed. I have studied the sage's legacy far longer than you've been alive, than you've studied without understanding. Naruto challenged, feeling an unusual certainty in his words. The Rinnegan doesn't grant divine authority. It conveys divine responsibility. Something in this distinction seemed to resonate, causing the path to hesitate momentarily. In that opening, Naruto felt a familiar presence approaching, Sasuke, having temporarily evaded the human path. Without verbal coordination, they initiated the combination technique they developed during their training sessions. Rinne Sharingan Perceptual Bridge. As Sasuke's Sharingan connected with Naruto's Rinnegan, their visual prowess synchronized, allowing Sasuke to temporarily perceive the chakra network connecting the paths that only the Rinnegan could naturally see. Through this shared perception, Sasuke executed precisely targeted fire techniques that disrupted the chakra transmission between paths, while Naruto simultaneously implemented a sealing technique that temporarily blocked the Deva path's gravitational abilities. This synchronized attack created another momentary vulnerability that Konoha's forces exploited across all battlefronts. Fu, coordinating with the village's specialized jonin, managed to neutralize the animal path completely, sealing it within a specialized containment field derived from techniques used to control tailed beasts. This loss reverberated through Pain's network, forcing a tactical reassessment. The Deva path, recognizing the increasing threat, made a decisive shift in strategy. Rather than continuing individual engagements, it retreated to a central position above the village and began gathering massive amounts of chakra. Fall back! Naruto shouted, recognizing the technique from Jiraiya's notes. He's preparing a large-scale Shinra Tensei. The warning spread through Konoha's forces, but the preparation time was shorter than anticipated. With a simple phrase, Shinra Tensei, the Deva path unleashed a gravitational repulsion of unprecedented scale. Buildings, people, and debris were violently pushed outward from the technique's epicenter, creating a perfect circle of destruction that expanded to encompass nearly half the village. The defensive barriers absorbed some of the impact, but the scale overwhelmed their capacity. Structures crumpled like paper, trees uprooted, and many defenders found themselves injured despite their preparations. At the technique's boundary, Naruto had used his own Deva path abilities to create a counterforce that protected those nearby, though the effort left him momentarily drained. As the dust settled, revealing a massive crater where Konoha's center had been, the strategic situation had dramatically deteriorated. Status report. Tsunade demanded through the communications network. Civilian shelters intact. Came Shizen's relieved response. Barrier team reports 63% casualties. NBU squadrons regrouping at fallback positions. The animal path remains contained. Yamato reported. But the Naraka path is attempting to reach it for restoration. Most critically, the village's primary defense strategy, the central sealing array, lay in ruins, leaving them dependent on the less precise backup beneath the monument. The Deva path, having expended significant chakra in its massive attack, temporarily withdrew to recover, protected by the remaining paths. In this momentary lull, Naruto took stock of their situation. Despite extensive preparations, Pain's attack had exceeded their defensive capabilities. Yet the brief connection he'd established with Nagato had revealed something crucial: the real body's location and condition. Lady Tsunade, he communicated through a clone. I need to attempt something unconventional. I believe I can reach Nagato directly, bypass the paths entirely. Explain, she demanded tersely. When our Rinnegan connected, I saw his actual location. Naruto explained. With the Flying Thunder God technique modified for chakra signatures, I might be able to transport directly to him while his paths are occupied here. The proposal was met with immediate concern. That's practically a suicide mission, Tsunade objected. You'd be facing him on his territory, alone, while he still controls 5 paths here. Not alone, came Sasuke's voice as he joined the discussion. The Sharingan Rinnegan connection we established works both ways. If Naruto can transport himself, he can bring me through the same chakra channel. Tsunade considered the proposal with the calculus of both Hokage and medical specialist. The risk is extreme, she observed finally. But so is continuing this battle of attrition. How soon can you attempt this? The Deva path used massive chakra for that attack, Naruto noted. It creates a 5-minute window before it can use gravitational techniques again. We need to move within that time frame, while the paths are relatively vulnerable. The plan crystallized rapidly. While Konoha's remaining forces would engage the other paths in coordinated containment operations, Naruto and Sasuke would attempt to reach Nagato directly. Fu volunteered to join them, bringing Komiai's unique sensing abilities that might help navigate Nagato's presumed defenses. As they prepared for this desperate gambit, Naruto took a moment to center himself, reflecting on Jiraiya's final advice about the purpose behind power. What awaited wasn't just a battle between techniques but a confrontation between philosophies, competing visions of how the Rinnegan's power should be applied. Ready? He asked his companions. Sasuke nodded, his Sharingan active and focused. Fu gave a determined smile, a slight glow of Komiai's chakra already visible around her. Drawing on his deepened connection with the Rinnegan, Naruto focused on the chakra signature he'd glimpsed through the Deva Path's eyes, a distinctive pattern he now recognized as Nagato's true form, not just his proxy bodies. No, he stated simply, implementing his modified Flying Thunder God. The world compressed and expanded in an instant, space-time folding around them through the combined principles of the fourth Hokage's technique and the Rinnegan's dimensional properties. When reality stabilized, they found themselves in a dimly lit chamber constructed within what appeared to be a massive paper tree, a structure both organic and artificial. Before them, connected to a mechanical apparatus that resembled a twisted tree of metal and tubes, sat an emaciated figure with long red hair partially covering Rinnegan eyes, Nagato in his true form. Beside him stood the blue-haired woman Naruto had glimpsed earlier, her expression shifting from shock to defensive determination. Impossible, she whispered, paper already forming into weapons around her. No one can penetrate this sanctuary, Konan. Nagato spoke, his voice far weaker than his path's confident tones. Stand down. This confrontation was inevitable. His Rinnegan eyes fixed on Naruto's with recognition. So you traced my chakra signature. Impressive for one so young, Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto addressed him, recognizing the distinctive chakra pattern of their shared clan. The orphan of Amigekyo who became pain, something like surprise flickered across Nagato's gaunt features. You recognize my clan lineage. Few remain who would. I've been studying our shared heritage, Naruto confirmed. The Uzumaki clan's specialization in sealing techniques, their vitality, their connection to both Senju and Uchiha lineages through distant relations. Behind him, Sasuke and Fu maintained vigilant stances, though either attacked, respecting the delicate nature of this unprecedented confrontation. You've come to kill me, Nagato stated matter-of-factly. To end the threat to your village and your tailed beast. I've come to understand, Naruto corrected. Before determining if we must be enemies. This response clearly wasn't what Nagato expected. His eyes narrowed slightly, studying Naruto with renewed intensity. Understanding requires experience. What do you know of true pain? Of loss so profound it reshapes your understanding of existence? Show him, Sasuke suggested quietly from behind. Not just with words. Recognizing the wisdom in this approach, Naruto stepped forward, extending his hand toward Nagato. The human path can extract information and souls. The Rinnegan itself allows for sharing perception. If understanding is what you require, then see my experiences directly, and allow me to see yours. The proposal was audacious, perhaps foolhardy. Establishing such a connection would make Naruto vulnerable to Nagato's greater experience with the Rinnegan's abilities. Yet it also represented the philosophy he had committed to, seeking understanding before confrontation. Konan moved to intercept, but Nagato raised a skeletal hand to halt her. Interesting, he observed. Jiraiya would approve of such an approach. After a moment's consideration, he continued. Very well. Let us share perception, Naruto Uzumaki. But be warned, my pain may overwhelm one who has lived in the protection of a great village. As their hands connected, both pairs of Rinnegan glowed with intensified light. The chamber around them seemed to fade as their consciousnesses linked through the unique properties of their shared dojutsu. What followed was a torrential exchange of experiences and memories. Nagato's childhood during war, the death of his parents before his eyes, his awakening of the Rinnegan in desperate defense of his friend Yahiko, the years with Jiraiya learning ninjutsu and hope, the formation of the original Akatsuki as a peace movement in war-torn Amigekyo, and finally the devastating betrayal that led to Yahiko's suicide on Nagato's own kunai, forced by Danzo and Hanzo to protect Konan. Simultaneously, Nagato experienced Naruto's memories, the isolation of his childhood as a Jinchuriki, the struggle to be acknowledged, the gradual formation of bonds with Team 7, the loss of the third Hokage, Sasuke's near defection, the discovery of his heritage, and Jiraiya's mentorship and sacrifice. When they separated, both were breathing heavily, their perspectives irrevocably altered by the shared experience. "You've suffered greatly," Naruto acknowledged, his voice thick with emotion. "The betrayal by Konoha and Amagekyu's leaders, the manipulation that cost Yahiko his life, and you've experienced isolation I never knew," Nagato admitted reluctantly. "Yet maintained faith in the very system that treated you as a weapon and sacrifice." The chamber remained silent as they processed this exchange, fundamental assumptions challenged on both sides. Fu and Sasuke watched cautiously, sensing the delicate balance of this unusual confrontation. "Jiraiya believed in you," Naruto finally continued. "Even as Pain, he recognized the idealistic student who wanted to break the cycle of hatred. That's why he fought so hard, not just to protect Konoha, but to save you from the path you'd chosen." Sentiment, Nagato dismissed, though with less conviction than before. "Jiraiya never understood that peace requires force to maintain, sacrifices to appreciate. But your methods haven't brought peace even to Amagekure," Naruto challenged. "Fear isn't peace. Control isn't harmony. And what alternative do you propose?" Nagato questioned, genuine curiosity entering his voice. "Pleasant words and mutual understanding have failed for generations. The great nations use smaller countries as their battlegrounds, then speak of peace while preparing for the next war." Here, Naruto faced the fundamental question that had haunted him since beginning his intensive study of the shinobi world's history and the sage's legacy. What alternative could he genuinely offer that wasn't naive idealism? "Not words alone," he answered carefully, "but a fundamental restructuring of how power operates between nations. The tailed beasts were divided to prevent any one nation from wielding disproportionate power. Yet we've recreated the same imbalance through military might and economic control." This analysis seemed to intrigue Nagato. "Continue," he prompted. "The Sage of Six Paths didn't just defeat the Ten Tails," Naruto explained, drawing on his studies and conversations with the Nine Tails. "He created a new system for distributing power more equitably. We need to do the same, not through force or fear, but through shared investment in stability." "Idealistic," Nagato critiqued, though without dismissal. "The powerful rarely surrender advantage voluntarily, unless they recognize that true security comes from systemic stability, not momentary advantage," Naruto countered. "The five great nations maintain their position through constant vigilance against each other, an exhausting, devastating cycle. True security would come from a system where no single nation needs to fear the other's power." As they continued this philosophical exchange, something subtle shifted in the chamber's atmosphere. Conan, watching closely, noticed Nagato's posture changing, the rigid certainty that had characterized him since Yahiko's death gradually softening as he engaged with ideas rather than merely imposing his will. "You speak like him," Nagato observed finally. "Yahiko had similar visions before reality destroyed his idealism. Then honor his original dream," Naruto proposed. "Not through Pain's destruction but through the ideals that formed the original Akatsuki." The conversation might have continued, exploring these complex philosophical territories, but was interrupted by a new presence materializing within the chamber, the masked figure known as Toby, appearing through his distinctive spatial distortion. "How disappointing," he commented, his single visible Sharingan eye narrowing as he assessed the scene. "Having a friendly chat with the enemy, Nagato? This wasn't our arrangement." The atmosphere instantly tensed, both Sasuke and Fu shifting to combat stances while Conan moved protectively closer to Nagato. "Madara," Nagato acknowledged, using the name the masked man had apparently claimed. "Your timing is inconvenient." "On the contrary," Toby replied smoothly. "I'd say my timing is perfect. You seem to be wavering in our purpose, distracted by nostalgia and the boy's rhetoric." Naruto studied the newcomer with his Rinnegan, perceiving complex chakra patterns that suggested advanced modification to his body, similar in some ways to the Azura path, but more sophisticated. "You're the one truly leading Akatsuki," he concluded. "Using Nagato's pain as a tool for your own agenda." "Perceptive," Toby acknowledged. "Though using implies a lack of shared purpose. Nagato and I both seek world transformation, merely through slightly different methods." "Transformation into what?" Sasuke demanded, his Sharingan detecting subtle falsehoods in the masked man's presentation. "A world without lies," Toby answered enigmatically. "Without the endless cycle of hope and disappointment that defines human existence. The infinite Tsukuyomi will create perfect peace through perfect control." This reference triggered connections in Naruto's mind, fragments from Jiraiya's research, ancient legends about the sage's confrontation with the Ten Tails, and his recent conversations with the Nine Tails. "That's what you need the tailed beasts for," he realized aloud. Not just as weapons, but to recreate the Ten-Tails as a power source for a genjutsu that would enslave the entire world. Not enslavement, Toby corrected. Liberation from the pain of choice and consequence. Everyone will live in the dream they most desire, perfect happiness without the messiness of reality. The inherent horror of this vision wasn't lost on anyone present. Even Nagato, who had pursued radical methods for peace, seemed disturbed by this articulation of their supposed shared goal. You never mentioned this aspect of the plan, he observed to Toby, suspicion evident in his tone. Details were provided on a need-to-know basis, Toby dismissed casually. The Eye of the Moon plan requires certain preparatory steps that might have seemed excessive without proper context. This confirmation of deception created a pivotal moment within the chamber. Nagato, already destabilized by his shared perception with Naruto, now faced evidence that his pain and power had been manipulated toward ends beyond his own vision of necessary sacrifice for peace. Conan, he spoke quietly. What would Yahiko say about a peace that removes free will? Before she could answer, Toby moved with blinding speed, his hand extending toward Nagato's eyes. I believe our partnership has reached its natural conclusion, he stated coldly. I'll be reclaiming those eyes now. His attempt was intercepted simultaneously by multiple defenses. Conan's paper techniques forming a protective barrier, Fu's insects creating a secondary shield, and most directly, Naruto's almighty push deflecting Toby's extended arm. What followed was chaos within the confined space. Toby's intangibility made conventional attacks futile, while his counter-strikes demonstrated combat experience far beyond even Nagato's considerable skills. Each time they seemed to land a coordinated blow, he would phase through it, retaliating with devastating precision. Throughout the confrontation, Naruto noted something crucial. Toby prioritized reaching Nagato above all else, specifically targeting his eyes. This singular focus created potential openings in his otherwise formidable defense. Sasuke! Naruto called as they regrouped after a particularly intense exchange. The 5-second vulnerability, it's consistent. And he can't maintain intangibility while trying to extract the Rinnegan. Understanding immediately, Sasuke coordinated with Naruto in a lightning-fast sequence of attacks designed not to damage Toby directly but to force him into a position where he would need to solidify to reach Nagato. As they maneuvered him into this position, Fu implemented her role perfectly, creating a cloud of chakra-infused scales that temporarily disoriented even the Sharingan's predictive abilities. In that crucial moment, as Toby solidified to dispel the scales and reach for Nagato, Naruto executed the technique he'd specifically developed for this opponent. Using his modified Flying Thunder God, he teleported directly into Toby's physical space during his vulnerable phase, applying a specialized sealing formula derived from his Uzumaki heritage. The seal, designed to disrupt space-time ninjutsu, imprinted directly onto Toby's chakra network. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Toby's attempt to phase through Sasuke's follow-up attack failed, resulting in a direct hit that cracked his mask further, revealing more of the face beneath, features that caused Sasuke to falter momentarily in shock. Impossible, the Uchiha whispered. You look like an Uchiha you thought long dead? Toby finished, his voice shifting to a deeper register as he abandoned his previous playful persona. There are many things about your clan's history you've yet to learn, Sasuke. Recognizing the psychological tactic, Naruto refocused the confrontation. Your space-time technique is temporarily sealed, he informed Toby. And you're outnumbered in a confined space. Your options are limited. For a tense moment, Toby assessed his situation, calculating possibilities with the strategic brilliance that had allowed him to manipulate events from shadows for decades. Limited but not eliminated, he concluded, forming hand signs for a fire technique of extraordinary scale, one that would potentially destroy the entire chamber and everyone within it, including himself if necessary. Before the technique could complete, however, intervention came from an unexpected source. Nagato, having observed the confrontation while connected to his life support apparatus, suddenly channeled massive chakra through his emaciated body. Bansho Tenin, he intoned, using the Deva Path's attractive force at point-blank range. The pull yanked Toby toward him with such power that the masked man couldn't complete his technique. As Toby was forcibly drawn within arm's reach, Nagato implemented a capability of the Rinnegan that even Naruto hadn't yet mastered, the ability to absorb and analyze techniques through direct contact. I see the truth now, Nagato stated, his skeletal hand gripping Toby's arm with surprising strength. Who you are. What you've done. How you've manipulated not just me but the entire shinobi world for generations. Toby struggled against the hold but found himself immobilized by the combination of Nagato's gravitational technique, the disruption of his space-time ninjutsu, and the supporting techniques from the others present. "This changes nothing," he insisted. "The plan proceeds with or without you. The collected tailed beasts will be released." Nagato interrupted, his Rinnegan blazing with renewed purpose. "Conan, initiate communication with the remaining paths." As Conan complied, establishing the chakra connection that would allow Nagato to directly control his 6 paths regardless of distance, the confrontation reached its turning point. In Konoha, the paths suddenly ceased their attacks, withdrawing to defensive positions that confused the village's defenders. Through this connection, Nagato assessed the destruction his techniques had caused: the crater at Konoha's center, the injured defenders, the infrastructural devastation. For the first time in years, he viewed his actions not through the lens of necessary sacrifice but through Yahiko's original vision of a world where peace came through understanding rather than force. "Naruto Uzumaki," he addressed solemnly, still maintaining his hold on the struggling Toby. "You possess the Rinnegan by birth rather than trauma. Perhaps that gives you a perspective I lost when pain became my only teacher. It's not too late to choose a different path," Naruto offered, recognizing the profound shift occurring in Nagato's thinking. Nagato's emaciated features formed something approximating a smile, the first genuine expression he had shown since Yahiko's death. "For me it may be. The path I've walked has cost too many lives to simply turn aside. But I can at least correct my greatest mistake." With those words, he made a decision that would reshape the future of the shinobi world. Drawing on life force he could ill afford to spend, Nagato activated the Rinnegan's most powerful and forbidden technique, the outer path, samsara of heavenly life. "What are you doing?" Toby demanded, recognizing the technique with evident alarm. "Choosing Yahiko's dream over yours," Nagato answered simply. As the technique manifested, spectral chains emerged from his body, connecting to the distant spiritual realm where those recently deceased lingered. In Konoha, witnesses described an otherworldly green light suffusing the village as those killed during Pain's attack, shinobi and civilians alike, began returning to life, their souls recalled and their bodies restored through the Rinnegan's divine authority over life and death. The cost to Nagato was immediate and catastrophic. His already frail body deteriorated rapidly as the technique drew on his remaining life force. Yet his expression reflected not regret, but a peace long absent from his features. "This technique," Naruto recognized with horror. "You're sacrificing yourself, a fair exchange," Nagato confirmed, his voice weakening. "My life for those I took. Though I cannot restore all the damage my path has caused throughout the years, I can at least make this one atonement." As his body failed, the hold on Toby necessarily weakened. The masked Akatsuki leader seized this opportunity, breaking free and creating distance between himself and the others. "Sentimental fool," he condemned Nagato. "Throwing away divine power for emotional catharsis. This changes nothing in the grand scheme, it changes everything," Conan contradicted, standing protectively near her dying friend. "It proves that even those deepest in darkness can choose light again." Toby's visible eye narrowed with contempt. "Pretty words for a failed revolution. Without the Rinnegan, you're no threat to me or my plans." Before anyone could respond to this dismissal, Nagato spoke again, his voice barely audible as his life ebbed. "Naruto, my final gift." What happened next occurred so rapidly that even Sasuke's Sharingan could barely track the sequence. Nagato, in his final moments, implemented a specialized transfer technique, one unique to the Rinnegan's capabilities. A pulse of pure chakra passed from him to Naruto, carrying not just energy but knowledge, memories, techniques, and understanding accumulated through decades of exploring the Rinnegan's capabilities. As this transfer completed, Nagato addressed Toby directly. "You sought these eyes for the infinite Tsukuyomi. Now they stand united against you." With those words as his epitaph, Nagato Uzumaki, orphan of Amigekure, student of Jiraiya, leader of Akatsuki, and wielder of the Rinnegan, died, his emaciated body relaxing as his spirit departed. The chamber fell silent save for Conan's quiet tears. Even Toby seemed momentarily subdued by the weight of what had transpired. Naruto, processing the massive influx of knowledge and chakra Nagato had transferred, stood in stunned contemplation of this unexpected evolution. "This sentimental display changes nothing," Toby finally declared, though his tone lacked its former confidence. "The collected tailed beasts remain in Akatsuki's possession. The plan proceeds." "No," Conan contradicted, rising with new determination. "Amigekure withdraws from Akatsuki. Pain's reign ends today. You would betray decades of work based on one emotional decision?" Toby questioned incredulously. I follow Yahiko's dream, she stated simply. As Nagato has finally done in his last act. That dream never included enslaving humanity within an illusion. Recognizing the strategic situation had fundamentally changed, Toby prepared to retreat. This isn't over, he warned. The Eye of the Moon plan has been in motion for generations. One setback means nothing in the grand scheme. Run if you must, Sasuke challenged, his Sharingan tracking Toby's movements. But know that your identity is no longer secret. The Uchiha connection I glimpsed, it will be investigated thoroughly. With a final glare from his visible eye, Toby implemented an emergency teleportation technique different from his usual method, more chakra-intensive but not affected by the temporary seal Naruto had placed on his standard space-time ninjutsu. In a swirling distortion, he vanished, leaving them in the chamber with Nagato's body and the transformed situation. As the immediate threat passed, they confronted the magnitude of what had occurred. In Konoha, the resurrected defenders were helping the injured and rebuilding what could be salvaged. The 6 paths of pain, no longer controlled by Nagato's consciousness, had collapsed into inert bodies. He restored them all. Fu marveled, receiving reports through her communication link with Konoha. Everyone who died in the attack, they're alive again, at the cost of his own life. Naruto acknowledged solemnly. Konan, composed despite her grief, addressed them formally. Amigakure will bury Nagato beside Yahiko, our founders, our friends. Their dream of peace through understanding will become our nation's guiding principle once more. And Akatsuki? Sasuke questioned pragmatically. Those who serve pain directly will follow my lead in withdrawing, she assured them. Though the organization has other members loyal to the masked one, Toby, or whatever his true name may be, Naruto nodded, processing both this geopolitical shift and the personal transformation he was experiencing as Nagato's transferred knowledge integrated with his own understanding. The techniques, perspectives, and experiences of another Rinnegan user expanded his comprehension of these eyes' true potential in ways that would have taken decades to discover independently. We should return to Konoha, he suggested finally. There's much to rebuild, and even more to plan now that we understand Akatsuki's true objective. As they prepared to depart using Naruto's transportation technique, Konan approached him with a final gesture, a bouquet of paper flowers crafted with her technique. For Jiraiya, she explained. Our teacher who never lost faith that peace was possible. Place these where he is honored in your village. Naruto accepted the tribute with appropriate solemnity. He would be proud to see the seeds he planted finally blooming in all his students. With respectful farewells exchanged, they returned to Konoha, arriving amid scenes of both devastation and miraculous reunion as families embraced members they had thought lost forever. The physical infrastructure had suffered catastrophic damage, but the human foundation remained intact, strengthened even by their shared survival of Pain's assault and Nagato's final redemptive act. Tsunade, coordinating recovery efforts from the Emergency Command Center, greeted their return with visible relief. Report, she requested simply, professional demeanor maintaining despite the chaos surrounding them. As Naruto explained what had transpired in Nagato's sanctuary, the philosophical exchange, Toby's intervention, and Nagato's sacrifice, the significance of these developments became increasingly apparent. Not just a military victory, but a fundamental shift in the conflict's nature had occurred. So Akatsuki fractures? Tsunade summarized. But this masked Uchiha, Toby, remains committed to collecting the tailed beasts for this infinite Tsukuyumi plan. Yes, Naruto confirmed. And based on what Nagato transferred to me, he's already collected several. The 4 tails and 5 tails confirmed, possibly others, which makes protecting the remaining Jinchuriki our priority. Tsunade concluded. Including you and Fu, not just protecting, Naruto suggested, the accumulated knowledge from Nagato providing new strategic perspectives. Uniting. If the tailed beasts were originally one entity divided by the sage for safety, perhaps their Jinchuriki should work together rather than remaining isolated assets of separate nations. This proposal represented a radical departure from centuries of shinobi world practice, where Jinchuriki were carefully guarded military assets. Yet the unprecedented circumstances, particularly the threat of the infinite Tsukuyumi, demanded unprecedented responses. You're suggesting an alliance of Jinchuriki? Tsunade questioned, considering the diplomatic implications. The 5 Kage would never approve releasing control of their tailed beasts. They might, Naruto countered, if they understood the alternative. This isn't about military advantage anymore, it's about preventing the enslavement of all humanity. Even the most power-hungry Kage would prefer maintaining their authority in a free world to losing it entirely in Tobi's genjutsu. As discussions continued into the night, amid the ongoing rescue and recovery operations, a new chapter in the shinobi world's history was taking shape. Pain's assault had ended not just in Konoha's survival but in a fundamental reconsideration of the structures that had perpetuated conflict for generations. For Naruto, standing amid the rebuilding efforts with the enhanced Rinnegan that now carried both his innate connection and Nagato's hard-won mastery, the path forward became increasingly clear. The prophecy Jiraiya had believed in, that his student would either save or destroy the world, was approaching its fulfillment. The question remaining was not whether Naruto would impact the world's future, that now seemed inevitable, but whether the shinobi system itself could evolve beyond its foundations in conflict and separation to embrace a more integrated vision of security and prosperity. As dawn broke over the damaged but enduring village, Naruto placed Konan's paper flowers at the memorial stone where Jiraiya's name had recently been added. The gesture symbolized not just remembrance but commitment to carrying forward the best aspects of multiple legacies: his parents' sacrifice, Jiraiya's wisdom, and now, surprisingly, Nagato's hard-won insights about both power and redemption. The rain had stopped completely, giving way to clear skies that promised new beginnings amid the rubble of what had been destroyed. Pain had come to Konoha seeking to teach a lesson about suffering. Instead, both teacher and student had learned something more valuable about the possibility of transcending cycles of hatred, not through force but through the much harder path of understanding. Chapter 19: Convergence of Shadows. The weeks following Pain's assault transformed Konoha in ways beyond mere physical reconstruction. As buildings rose from rubble through combined efforts of wood-release users, construction crews, and civilian volunteers, a different kind of rebuilding occurred in the village's strategic position and philosophical outlook. Naruto found himself at the center of this transformation. The villagers who had once shunned the demon child now greeted him with respect bordering on reverence. Stories of his confrontation with Pain spread, evolving with each retelling until some accounts bordered on mythological. Children practiced almighty push techniques in playgrounds, using exaggerated hand gestures to send imaginary opponents flying. This newfound recognition might once have satisfied his deepest longing for acknowledgement. Now, it felt almost incidental compared to the responsibilities he shouldered. "You need to delegate more," Sakura chided, finding him in the temporary command center long after midnight, reviewing intelligence reports on Akatsuki movements. "Even Jinchuriki needs sleep. I'll sleep when Tobi's plans are neutralized," Naruto replied, though he set aside the scrolls at her insistence. The Rinnegan's enhanced perception allowed him to function with minimal rest, but even he had limits. "Any word from Suna?" Sakura asked, helping organize the scattered documents. "Gaara has called for an emergency summit of the 5 Kage," Naruto confirmed. The Tsuchikage and Reikage were initially resistant, but with both Konoha and Suna presenting unified intelligence about the infinite Tsukuyami threat, they've reluctantly agreed. This unprecedented diplomatic initiative represented a direct outcome of Pain's attack. Tsunade had recognized that Konoha alone, even with its formidable shinobi force, couldn't counter a threat targeting all humanity. Ancient rivalries and suspicions between nations needed to be temporarily set aside for collective survival. "And the Jinchuriki initiative?" Sakura pressed, referring to Naruto's controversial proposal to unite the remaining tailed beast hosts. "Complicated," Naruto admitted. "The 2 tails and 3 tails have already been captured according to our intelligence. Gaara no longer hosts the 1 tail but supports the initiative. Fu's village has essentially granted her autonomy to work with us. The 8 tails Jinchuriki, Killer Bee, remains under strict Kumo protection, and the 6 tails? Unconfirmed reports suggest Utakata is in hiding, possibly believing Akatsuki's hunter teams to be from his home village of Kiri." Naruto rubbed his temples, a rare gesture of fatigue. "It's exactly the kind of distrust and isolation this initiative aims to overcome." Their conversation was interrupted by Shikamaru's arrival. Despite the late hour, the strategist appeared fully alert, holding a newly arrived communication scroll. "Intelligence from AIM," he announced without preamble. "Konan reports unusual activity around their borders. Unidentified chakra signatures testing her defensive barrier periodically. Tobi," Naruto concluded immediately. "He needs her alive to locate Nagato's body." This assessment aligned with their working theory. Although Nagato had transferred significant knowledge and chakra to Naruto before dying, his actual Rinnegan eyes remained in his corpse, a prize Tobi would undoubtedly seek for his plans. Konan anticipated this. Shikamaru continued, unrolling the scroll to reveal a detailed message. She's rigged the entire city with paper explosive traps and fortified the mausoleum where Nagato and Yahiko rest. However, she's requesting additional sealing experts to reinforce the protective barriers. Naruto considered this request carefully. Amigekure had historically been Konoha's enemy. Yet strategic realities had shifted dramatically. Konan's aim represented a crucial ally against Akatsuki's remnants. I'll go myself, he decided. My Fuinjutsu skills have improved significantly, and the knowledge Nagato transferred includes specialized techniques for protecting Rinnegan. Lady Tsunade won't approve you leaving the village alone, Sakura objected. Not when you're a primary Akatsuki target. Who said anything about alone? Naruto countered with a hint of his old mischievous smile. I'm thinking a small, specialized team, you for medical support, Sasuke for Sharingan-based countermeasures against Tobi, and perhaps Hinata for her perceptive abilities. Shikamaru nodded approvingly. Logical composition. I'll present the proposal to Lady Tsunade with my recommendation for approval. As expected, securing permission required substantial negotiation. Tsunade, while recognizing the strategic importance of protecting Nagato's Rinnegan from Akatsuki, remained reluctant to risk her village's most valuable assets, particularly with the 5 Kage summit approaching. If Tobi acquires those eyes, Naruto argued during their strategy session, the timeline for implementing the infinite Tsukuyumi accelerates dramatically. We've confirmed he possesses at least 4-tailed beasts already. With Nagato's Rinnegan, he gains the means to control the 10 tails once reconstituted, and if he captures you during this mission, Tsunade countered, he gains the 9 tails and your Rinnegan in one stroke. The debate concluded with a compromise. Naruto's team would travel to Amigekure, but with ANBU reinforcements shadowing them as backup. Additionally, they would implement a new communication protocol using summons that could traverse dimensions, allowing instantaneous updates between the team and Konoha's command. 2 days later, they departed under cover of pre-dawn darkness, moving swiftly through Fire Country's forests toward the perpetually rain-soaked borders of Amigekure. The journey provided time for Naruto to brief his teammates on capabilities they might not have fully appreciated. Tobi's space-time ninjutsu has limitations we can exploit, he explained as they made camp on the first evening. His intangibility works by briefly shifting parts of his body to another dimension, but he can maintain this state for a maximum of 5 consecutive seconds, and he can't attack while intangible, Sasuke added, recalling their previous encounter. Correct, Naruto confirmed. Additionally, the seal I placed on him during our last confrontation should still be affecting his primary transportation technique, forcing him to use more chakra-intensive alternatives. Hinata, who had grown considerably more confident since beginning her training sessions with Naruto, contributed her own insights. My Byakugan might perceive the dimensional shift as it occurs. During clan training exercises, I've been able to detect subtle space-time disruptions during transportation techniques. Their planning continued as they approached Amigekure's misty borders on the second day. Unlike their previous covert missions, this team entered the hidden village openly, greeted at its boundaries by Konan herself, accompanied by a guard detail of former Akatsuki associates who had remained loyal to Pain's organization. Thank you for coming, she greeted them formally, her usual paper flower adorning blue hair that seemed to merge with the perpetual rain. The situation has grown more urgent since my message. We've detected 3 separate infiltration attempts in the past 24 hours. She led them through Amigekure's industrial landscape, a vertical metropolis of metal towers and pipelines where rain fell in never-ending sheets. Citizens watched their passage with curious but not hostile eyes, word of Pain's final actions and Konan's new alliance with Konoha having spread throughout the population. The city's outer defenses are primarily paper-based, Konan explained as they traversed the central district. Every raindrop contains a fragment of my chakra, creating a sensory network that alerts me to unauthorized entry. However, Tobi's space-time techniques can potentially bypass this system entirely, which is why conventional barriers won't suffice. Naruto acknowledged, his Rinnegan perceiving the elaborate chakra network Konan had established throughout the city. We need specialized seals designed specifically for dimensional anchoring. They arrived at a secluded island at the city's heart, accessible only by a single bridge heavily guarded by AIM's elite forces. At the island's center stood a simple shrine constructed of metal and paper, the final resting place of Yahiko and Nagato, marked by the original Akatsuki's red cloud symbol, its meaning reclaimed from the organization it had become. Inside the shrine, Naruto immediately sensed the residual chakra of the Rinnegan, a distinctive energy even in dormancy. Nagato's body lay preserved through specialized techniques, his eyes closed but intact. I've considered destroying them, Conan admitted as they examined the elaborate protective seals already in place. But something prevents me. They were part of him, the last physical remnant of both Nagato and the sage's legacy. Destruction might be safest, Sasuke observed pragmatically. No eyes, no risk. It's not that simple, Naruto countered, drawing on Nagato's transferred knowledge. The Rinnegan contains genetic and spiritual information beyond the physical organs. Destroying them improperly could potentially release that energy in ways we can't predict. Hinata, scanning the shrine with her Byakugan, provided additional insight. There's an unusual chakra pattern surrounding the body, almost like a dormant jutsu awaiting activation. This observation confirmed Naruto's suspicion. A contingency measure, he concluded. Nagato established a failsafe in case someone attempted to take or destroy his eyes after death. Working together over the next several hours, they analyzed the existing protective framework and developed a multi-layered approach to reinforcement. Naruto's Fuinjutsu, enhanced by Nagato's transferred knowledge, formed the foundation, a series of dimensional anchoring seals that would prevent spatial transportation techniques within the shrine's boundaries. Sasuke contributed genjutsu barriers keyed specifically to Sharingan users, designed to disrupt the visual perception needed for precise space-time techniques. Sakura established medical countermeasures that would trigger cellular breakdown in the eyes if unauthorized removal was attempted. Hinata's contribution involved Hyuga sealing techniques that created blind spots in chakra perception around the shrine, making it effectively invisible to sensory-type ninjas. Conan observed their coordinated efforts with growing appreciation. You work together seamlessly, she noted during a brief rest period. Different abilities complementing rather than competing. That's Konoha's true strength, Naruto replied, thinking of his village's history. Not just powerful individuals but effective teamwork. Yahiko believed in that approach, Conan reminisced, a rare softness entering her usually composed expression. That peace would come through cooperation rather than domination. Their work continued into the night and following day, implementing increasingly sophisticated protections. By the second evening, the shrine had been transformed into perhaps the most securely sealed location in the shinobi world, a fortress designed specifically to thwart the unique abilities of a single, dangerous opponent. As they completed the final sealing array, Naruto sensed a disturbance at the edge of his Rinnegan's perception range, a subtle warping of space approximately 5 kilometers from their position. He's here, he announced tensely. Northwestern quadrant, moving cautiously through the industrial district. Conan immediately activated Amigekure's defense protocol, her paper clones dispersing throughout the city to coordinate response teams while simultaneously intensifying the chakra-infused rainfall to track the intruders' movements. Evacuate civilian sectors, she ordered her lieutenants. Implement Containment Protocol 3, the shrine's final defensive measure, a space-time barrier that would essentially remove the structure from normal dimensional space for 72 hours, required approximately 30 minutes to fully activate. Naruto's team positioned themselves to defend the perimeter during this critical window, each taking strategic positions that emphasized their specialized abilities. He's accelerating, Hinata reported, her Byakugan tracking the approaching threat. Moving directly toward our position. He knows we've detected him. Of course he does, Sasuke observed grimly. He's likely been watching the city for days, waiting for exactly this moment, when the defenses are established but not yet fully activated. The assault, when it came, demonstrated why Toby had remained such a formidable force despite operating primarily from shadows. Rather than a direct approach, multiple attacks struck simultaneously across Amigekure, explosive diversions detonating in precisely calculated sequences to divide defensive resources and create confusion. Through this carefully orchestrated chaos, Toby himself approached the Shrine Island using a transportation technique different from his usual method, a longer-range variant that sacrificed precision for distance, depositing him at the island's edge rather than directly inside the shrine. Impressive preparations, he acknowledged, his masked figure materializing through swirling spatial distortion. The mask itself had changed since their last encounter, now a different design with a single eye hole that emphasized the Sharingan beneath. Though ultimately futile, you're too late, Naruto stated, facing him directly while his teammates maintained their tactical positions. The shrine is already transitioning to dimensional isolation. Even your space-time ninjutsu can't reach it now. This claim, while not entirely accurate, the process would require another 15 minutes to complete, served its purpose in provoking a reaction. Toby's body language shifted subtly, suggesting increased urgency. A minor inconvenience, he dismissed, though his accelerated pace toward the shrine belied his casual tone. Dimensional barriers can be breached by one who understands their true nature. As he advanced, the coordinated defense plan engaged. Conan's paper techniques created a series of layered obstacles, each embedded with explosive tags timed to detonate sequentially. Sasuke implemented genjutsu traps designed specifically for Sharingan users, subtle distortions in visual perception that became apparent only when viewed through the dojutsu. Toby navigated these initial defenses with concerning ease, his experience and analytical skill allowing him to identify and neutralize most threats before they fully manifested. His space-time technique, while clearly more chakra-intensive than his standard approach, still rendered most conventional attacks ineffective. The real challenge began when he encountered Hinata's specialized defensive technique, 8 trigrams, Perception Veil. Unlike standard Hyuga methods that targeted an opponent's chakra points directly, this approach created a field that distorted spatial awareness within its boundaries. Anyone entering the field experienced subtle displacements between their perceived and actual positions, a disorientation particularly effective against precision techniques. Toby's progress visibly slowed as he entered this field, his movements becoming slightly less coordinated as the perceptual disruption affected his spatial calculations. This created the opening Sakura had been waiting for. Utilizing the immense strength developed through years of training under Tsunade, she struck the ground with precisely calculated force, not aiming for Toby directly but strategically weakening the structural integrity of the pathway he traversed. The resulting controlled collapse created momentary confusion that Sasuke exploited, launching a complex fire technique that surrounded rather than targeted Toby directly. Amaterasu! Sasuke invoked, his Mangekyo Sharingan manifesting the black flames that burned anything they touched. Rather than aiming at Toby himself, which would be futile against intangibility, Sasuke created a perimeter of inextinguishable fire that limited movement options and forced predictable evasion patterns. Through this coordinated sequence, they maneuvered Toby into position for Naruto's prepared counterattack, a modified version of the sealing technique he'd applied during their previous encounter, enhanced with principles derived from Nagato's knowledge. Your teamwork is admirable, Toby acknowledged as he assessed the increasingly constrained tactical situation. Though predictable to someone who helped develop Konoha's strategic doctrine, this cryptic comment momentarily distracted Naruto, just enough for Toby to implement a contingency technique of his own. Rather than continuing his approach toward the shrine, he abruptly reversed direction, targeting Hinata with unexpected precision. Your perception technique is the foundation of their strategy, he assessed, moving with blinding speed toward the Hyuga heiress. Remove it, and the defense collapses. The attack came with such suddenness that even Hinata's Byakugan-enhanced reflexes barely registered the threat before Toby was upon her, his hand extending toward her eyes in a chilling echo of his attempt to take Nagato's Rinnegan. What happened next demonstrated how significantly Naruto's capabilities had evolved since acquiring Nagato's knowledge. Without physical movement or hand signs, he implemented the Deva Path's instantaneous gravitational repulsion, precisely calibrated to affect Toby in his vulnerable materialization moment. The masked Akatsuki leader was violently propelled away from Hinata, his attack interrupted mid-execution. Yet even in this moment of defensive reaction, Toby demonstrated why he had remained undefeated for decades, turning the momentum of the repulsion into a controlled retreat that positioned him for his next assault. You've integrated Nagato's abilities impressively quickly, he observed, recovering his stance. Though you still lack the intuitive mastery that comes with decades of experience. Experience isn't everything, Naruto countered, moving to establish a defensive position between Toby and the shrine. Innovation often overcomes convention. To demonstrate this principle, he implemented a technique that combined principles from multiple sources: the Flying Thunder God's instantaneous movement, the Rinnegan's gravitational manipulation, and Uzumaki's sealing methodology. The result was a spatial distortion field surrounding the shrine that essentially created a localized gravitational lens, subtly bending any approach vector toward prepared defensive positions. Toby, immediately recognizing the sophisticated technique, paused his advance to reassess. Interesting. Combining Minato's space-time principles with Rinnegan capabilities. Despite the mask concealing his features, his tone suggested genuine admiration. Your father would be impressed with such innovation. The casual reference to Naruto's parentage, information that had only recently been shared with him officially, served as another calculated distraction. Naruto, however, had anticipated such psychological tactics. My father would be disappointed by what you've become, he replied evenly. Whoever you once were to Konoha. This exchange bought crucial minutes for the shrine's dimensional isolation protocol to progress further. Conan, monitoring the sealing array's activation, signaled that they needed only 7 more minutes to complete the process. Recognizing the diminishing window for acquisition, Toby shifted to a more aggressive approach. "Enough conversation," he declared, forming complex hand signs for a technique unfamiliar to most present. "Wood release, cutting sprigs jutsu," he announced, manifesting wooden projectiles that shot toward multiple targets simultaneously. The technique itself was shocking enough, wood release being a Kekkai Genkai famously unique to the first Hokage, but its implementation revealed combat experience that bordered on precognition. Each wooden sprig targeted precisely calculated weaknesses in their defensive formation, forcing responses that created momentary openings in their coverage. Sasuke, recognizing the strategic pattern, called a warning even as he countered the projectiles aimed at his position. "He's creating deliberate response patterns. Don't react predictably." The advice came moments too late as Toby exploited exactly such a predictable defensive reaction from one of Conan's paper clone defenders, using it to create a brief corridor toward the shrine. In the instant this path opened, he implemented his space-time technique, attempting to bypass the remaining distance in a single transportation. Here, Naruto's modified spatial field proved its worth. As Toby's technique engaged, the gravitational distortion subtly altered his emergence coordinates, depositing him not inside the shrine as intended but in a prepared sealing trap 10 meters to its west. The trap, a collaboration between Naruto's Uzumaki heritage and Conan's paper techniques, activated instantly, attempting to bind Toby's chakra network with specialized restraints designed to neutralize space-time manipulation specifically. For a breathless moment, it appeared to succeed. Toby materialized fully within the sealing array, paper constraints wrapping around his form as seal formulas illuminated the ground beneath him. Yet victory proved fleeting as he implemented a countermeasure none had anticipated. A space-time technique that didn't transport himself but the sealing array itself, essentially removing the trap from around him. "Impressive," Sakura acknowledged grudgingly. "He displaced the entire sealing mechanism without disrupting its integrity, which means he's expending significant chakra," Sasuke noted, his Sharingan tracking the subtle indicators of energy consumption. "He can't maintain this level of output indefinitely." This assessment aligned with Naruto's observations. Through his Rinnegan, he perceived fluctuations in Toby's chakra flow that suggested increasing strain, likely a consequence of both the ongoing engagement and the lingering effects of the seal Naruto had placed during their previous encounter. 3 more minutes, Conan updated tensely, her paper clones maintaining a defensive perimeter while simultaneously channeling chakra into the shrine's isolation protocol. These final minutes proved the most intense of the confrontation. Toby, recognizing the rapidly closing window, abandoned tactical subtlety for raw power, implementing increasingly destructive techniques that sacrificed precision for overwhelming force. "Fire release, great fire annihilation," he announced, generating a massive wave of flames that swept toward the shrine and defenders alike. A technique of such scale that it momentarily transformed Amageku's perpetual rain into steam. Countering this overwhelming assault required combined efforts from all defenders. Hinata and Sakura combined their chakra to enhance Sasuke's defensive fire manipulation, redirecting rather than directly opposing the conflagration. Naruto implemented the Predapath's absorption ability at its highest capacity, drawing in portions of the technique's chakra to reduce its intensity. Conan sacrificed dozens of paper clones to create momentary barriers that fragmented the fire's advance. Through this coordinated defense, they managed to protect the shrine, though at considerable cost to their chakra reserves and defensive positioning. As the flames subsided, Toby seized this moment of relative vulnerability to implement what appeared to be his contingency strategy: direct confrontation rather than continued tactical maneuvering. Moving with blinding speed enhanced by space-time distortions, he engaged Naruto directly, apparently recognizing him as both the primary threat and potential secondary objective. Their close-quarters combat demonstrated a stark contrast in styles, Toby's movements reflecting decades of refined experience across multiple wars, while Naruto's approach combined unpredictability with raw power amplified by the Rinnegan. "Your technique is unrefined," Toby critiqued as they exchanged blows, his Sharingan anticipating most conventional attacks. "Raw talent without proper foundation, maybe," Naruto acknowledged, intentionally maintaining a defensive posture to buy the final seconds needed for the shrine's isolation. "But I have something you lack, and what might that be?" Toby questioned, momentarily curious despite the tactical situation. "Friends who don't need hand signals to coordinate," Naruto replied with a hint of a smile. The statement's significance became immediately apparent as Sasuke, Hinata, and Sakura implemented a synchronized assault they had developed specifically for this confrontation. Sasuke created a lightning clone that drew Toby's attention with apparent vulnerability, Hinata used her gentle fist to create a momentary chakra disruption in the space surrounding him, and Sakura delivered a precisely timed impact to the ground that disrupted his footwork. This coordinated sequence created a single, crucial moment where Toby needed to solidify completely to re-establish his balance, the vulnerability window they had been working to create. In that instant, Naruto implemented the specialized sealing technique they had prepared as their ultimate countermeasure. Uzumaki sealing technique, dimensional anchor. He invoked, applying the seal directly to Toby's chakra network during his momentary tangibility. Unlike the previous seal that had merely disrupted Toby's space-time ninjutsu temporarily, this more sophisticated version established what amounted to a dimensional coordinate lock, preventing any form of spatial transportation for a significantly longer duration. The masked Akatsuki leader immediately recognized the technique's implications, attempting to disengage with uncharacteristic urgency. Release completed, Konan announced in that same moment, as the shrine surrounded itself with a distinctive barrier that signified successful dimensional isolation. Nagato's Rinnegan is secure. Toby's body language conveyed momentary frustration before returning to his usual composed state. A temporary setback, he assessed, creating distance between himself and his opponents. The eyes were merely one path to the objective. There are others. Your objective is failing, Naruto countered, maintaining combat readiness despite the immediate goal being secured. Nagato rejected your vision. Konan has reclaimed Amigekure. The Jinchuriki are uniting against you. The 5 Kage will soon stand together. Something like amusement emanated from behind Toby's mask. You mistake tactical adjustments for strategic defeat, he replied. The infinite Tsukuyomi has been centuries in preparation. Pieces move on the board, but the game proceeds. Before they could pursue this cryptic statement, he implemented what appeared to be a last resort transportation technique, one that required significantly more chakra and preparation than his standard methods. Despite the dimensional anchor seal, this specialized approach created a rippling distortion around his form. Until next time, Naruto Uzumaki, Toby stated as his form began dissolving into the distortion. Give my regards to Kakashi, and asked him about Obito Uchiha. With that provocative parting message, he vanished, not through his usual instantaneous transportation but via a slower, more chakra-intensive method that gradually extracted him from their dimensional plane. The technique left residual energy signatures that suggested considerable strain and potential vulnerability at his destination point. As the dimensional disturbance faded, they assessed their situation. The shrine containing Nagato's Rinnegan was now secured within a specialized isolation field that would remain active for 72 hours, more than sufficient time to implement permanent protections. Amigekure had suffered damage from Toby's diversionary attacks, but civilian casualties were minimal thanks to early evacuation protocols. Most significantly, they had confirmed crucial intelligence about their adversary, his connection to wood-release techniques, his apparent knowledge of Konoha's historical strategic doctrines, and his cryptic reference to someone named Obito Uchiha. Who is Obito Uchiha? Sakura questioned as they regrouped in Konan's command center, treating minor injuries sustained during the confrontation. A casualty from the Third Shinobi War, Sasuke answered, his expression troubled. According to clan records, he was Kakashi's teammate who died during a mission, supposedly crushed by a boulder after gifting Kakashi his Sharingan. Supposedly, Naruto repeated, the implications clear. We need to speak with Kakashi-sensei when we return. Their discussion turned to broader strategic considerations. With Nagato's Rinnegan secured against immediate acquisition, Toby would likely accelerate alternate aspects of his plan, particularly the capture of remaining Jinchuriki and any other components needed for the infinite Tsukuyomi. He mentioned other paths to the objective, Hinata recalled. What alternatives might he pursue, according to Nagato's knowledge? Naruto explained, drawing on the transferred insights. The infinite Tsukuyomi theoretically requires either the Rinnegan or some equivalent visual prowess to initiate once the Ten Tails is reconstituted. Equivalent visual prowess, Sasuke repeated thoughtfully. An evolved form of the Sharingan, perhaps? This speculation aligned with fragmented historical records about Madara Uchiha supposedly awakening the Rinnegan near the end of his life, suggesting a potential evolutionary relationship between the dojutsu. If Toby sought to recreate this evolution rather than acquire Nagato's eyes directly, it would explain his continued interest in both Sasuke and Naruto. Their strategic assessment continued into the night, coordinating with Konoha via summoning-based communications. Tsunade, updated on developments, ordered their immediate return once Amigekure's defenses were stabilized, particularly given the approaching 5 Kage summit where this intelligence would prove crucial. Before departing the following day, Naruto met privately with Konan on the balcony overlooking Amigekure's industrial skyline, rain creating constant music against metal surfaces. Your defense of Nagato's legacy honors him, she acknowledged. Though I suspect he would find it ironic that his eyes remain objects of power politics even after his death. Not politics, Naruto corrected gently. Protection. Those eyes represent both tremendous potential and terrible danger, like the tailed beasts themselves. Konan considered this comparison thoughtfully. Yahiko once said that true peace would come when power served people rather than people serving power. Perhaps that applies to dojutsu and tailed beasts as well. It does, Naruto agreed, finding unexpected resonance in this philosophy. Which is why the Jinchuriki initiative isn't about creating a counterweapon against Akatsuki, but establishing a new relationship between hosts and tailed beasts, one based on partnership rather than dominance. Ambitious, Konan observed with subtle approval. Though the 5 Kage may resist surrendering their military assets, they're not surrendering anything, Naruto clarified. They're investing in a sustainable security framework. The current system of isolated Jinchuriki maintained as village weapons hasn't prevented 3 major wars. Something fundamental needs to change. Their conversation concluded with formal but meaningful commitments. Amigekure under Konan's leadership would maintain its alliance with Konoha while restructuring its governance toward Yahiko's original vision. Intelligence about Akatsuki movements would continue flowing between their nations, creating an information network outside traditional alliance structures. The team departed Amigekure with mission objectives accomplished but new questions emerging, particularly regarding Tobi's true identity and the cryptic reference to Obito Uchiha. As they traveled back toward Konoha, Sasuke remained uncharacteristically contemplative, processing implications for his clan's history and his own path forward. If Tobi is somehow connected to a supposedly dead Uchiha, he observed during their journey, it raises questions about what else in my clan's official history might be incomplete or deliberately obscured. The clan massacre? Naruto suggested carefully, knowing the sensitivity of this topic. Among other things, Sasuke confirmed. There have always been inconsistencies in the official account, details that didn't align with physical evidence or witness statements. This conversation touched on a potentially significant intersection between personal history and global threats. If Tobi's identity connected to Uchiha clan politics and potentially to Itachi's actions, it suggested deeper conspiracies than previously understood. Their return to Konoha coincided with final preparations for the Hokage's delegation to the 5 Kage summit. Tsunade, reviewing their mission report and intelligence findings, immediately recognized the strategic significance of Tobi's reference to Obito Uchiha. Summon Kakashi, she ordered after their debriefing. This connection needs clarification before we present our intelligence to the other Kage. The meeting that followed in the Hokage's secure conference room brought together key figures in Konoha's defense structure: Tsunade, Shizen, Shikaku Nara, Kakashi, and Team 7 including Sai, who had been conducting separate intelligence operations during their Amigekure mission. When presented with Tobi's parting message and the reference to Obito Uchiha, Kakashi's normally composed demeanor visibly faltered. His visible eye widened with something between shock and denial. Impossible, he stated flatly. I watched Obito die. Half his body was crushed by a cave-in during a mission in Earth Country territory. Did you confirm the death? Shikaku questioned pragmatically. Retrieve the body? We couldn't, Kakashi admitted reluctantly. Enemy reinforcements were approaching. Rin and I were forced to retreat, leaving him behind as he requested. The admission clearly pained him even decades later. Then confirmation was never established, Tsunade concluded. And the timeline would align with Akatsuki's emergence and Tobi's apparent age. But why? Kakashi questioned, struggling with the implications. Obito was idealistic, loyal to Konoha, devoted to his friends. What could possibly transform him into? He couldn't complete the sentence. The same thing that transformed Nagato, Naruto suggested quietly. Pain and manipulation. Nagato mentioned Tobi finding him after Yahiko's death, offering purpose for his suffering. This theory aligned with fragmented intelligence they had gathered about Akatsuki's evolution from AIM freedom fighters to international mercenaries to ideological terrorists. If Tobi had been systematically identifying powerful shinobi in moments of profound trauma and redirecting their pain toward his objectives, it suggested a pattern extending beyond Nagato. We need to consider what this means for the 5 Kage summit, Tsunade redirected, though her expression suggested she recognized the personal impact this revelation had on Kakashi. If Tobi is indeed a former Konoha shinobi with would-release abilities and the Sharingan, it raises significant questions about historical events we've never fully resolved. The implications hung heavily in the air: the Ninetales attack 16 years ago, the Uchiha massacre, perhaps even aspects of the Third Shinobi War's conclusion. Events that had shaped Konoha's recent history might all connect to a single manipulator operating across decades. I should be part of the delegation to the summit, Naruto proposed. Not as Konoha's Jinchuriki, but as someone who has directly confronted both Pain and Tobi, who understands the nature of the infinite Tsukuyomi threat through the Rinnegan's perspective. The suggestion met mixed reactions. Traditionally, Jinchuriki were not included in diplomatic missions due to both security concerns and the political implications of deploying what other nations viewed as living weapons. The summit already represents unprecedented cooperation, Shikaku cautioned. Adding a Jinchuriki to the delegation might be perceived as provocative, or it might demonstrate exactly the new approach we're advocating, Tsunade countered, considering the proposal's merits. If we're asking the 5 great nations to reconsider their approach to Jinchuriki and tailed beasts, having Naruto present as a respected shinobi rather than merely a military asset makes a powerful statement. The discussion extended into specific security protocols, diplomatic approaches, and strategic messaging for the summit. Eventually, a compromise was reached. Naruto would accompany the delegation but remain officially outside the formal proceedings unless specifically invited to contribute by Tsunade. As preparations for the summit delegation accelerated, Naruto sought out Kakashi for a private conversation, finding his former sensei at the memorial stone where he so often contemplated past losses. I don't want to believe it, Kakashi admitted without preamble, knowing why Naruto had sought him out. Obito was pure-hearted. He believed in protecting his friends above all else. People change, Naruto observed gently. Especially after trauma, but to this extent? Kakashi questioned, genuine confusion evident in his voice. To orchestrate decades of conflict? To target the village he once swore to protect? It contradicts everything he was, or everything you knew about him, Naruto suggested carefully. Sometimes we see only what others want us to see. This philosophical exchange continued as they walked through Konoha's reconstructed districts, each processing the implications of potentially confronting a transformed version of someone who had once been precious to Kakashi, just as Naruto had faced the transformed Nagato who had once been precious to Jiraiya. If it is him, Kakashi finally stated, resolve hardening his voice, then I bear responsibility for whatever he became. I promised to protect Rin for him, and I failed. I received his eye but didn't honor his vision. You can't take responsibility for another's choices, Naruto countered, drawing on wisdom gained through his own experiences. Regardless of what happened after you believed him dead, his decisions remained his own, just as Nagato's were, despite his pain. As they prepared for the journey to the Land of Iron, the neutral territory selected for the unprecedented 5 Kage summit, a palpable sense of historical significance permeated Konoha. For the first time since the formation of the Hidden Village system, the leaders of the 5 great shinobi nations would gather not to divide territory or negotiate uneasy truces, but to address a common existential threat. The composition of Konoha's delegation reflected the gravity of the situation: Tsunade as Hokage, Shikaku Naro as chief strategist, Kakashi representing elite Jonin perspective, and unexpectedly, both Naruto and Sasuke, the Jinchuriki whose Rinnegan represented both target and potential counter to Akatsuki's plans, and the Uchiha whose Sharingan might provide crucial insights into Tobi's techniques. Their departure attracted attention throughout the village, citizens lining streets to witness this unprecedented diplomatic mission. Among those watching, Naruto noticed Hinata, her expression conveying confidence and something more personal that had been gradually developing between them through their training sessions and shared missions. With a final gesture of acknowledgement to the village that had transformed from his prison to his home, Naruto joined the delegation as they departed toward a summit that would either unify the shinobi world against unprecedented threat or reveal divisions too deep to overcome even in the face of common danger. The journey to the Land of Iron provided time for final strategy refinement. Through careful information compartmentalization, they had developed approaches for multiple potential scenarios, from full cooperative engagement by all 5 Kage to outright rejection of the infinite Tsukuyomi threat as Konoha fabrication. The Reikage will be the most resistant, Shikaku predicted during their planning session. Kyumo has historically maintained the most aggressive stance toward other hidden villages and views its Jinchuriki as military assets rather than potential partners, while the Tsuchikage may be skeptical from experience, Tsunade added. Inoki has led Iwagakure through 3 shinobi wars and tends to view new threats through the lens of potential power plays by rival villages. And the Mizukage? Naruto questioned, less familiar with Kirigakure's current leadership. Mei Terumi is relatively new to the position, Kakashi explained. She led the rebellion that overthrew the previous regime and has been implementing progressive reforms. Potentially receptive to new approaches, though cautious about any perceived vulnerability. As their journey progressed through increasingly snow-covered terrain, Naruto found himself contemplating not just the immediate diplomatic challenges but the broader historical context. The hidden village system itself, created after endless clan warfare as a structure for maintaining balance of power, had never faced a threat that transcended national interests so completely. The infinite Tsukuyomi represented something beyond conventional conflict, not conquest or dominance within the existing system, but its complete replacement with something fundamentally different. Whether that difference represented salvation or damnation depended entirely on one's perspective on human choice and the nature of reality itself. These philosophical dimensions of the conflict had become increasingly apparent to Naruto as he integrated Nagato's transferred knowledge with his own experiences. The Rinnegan granted not just techniques but perspective, the ability to perceive connections and patterns that extended beyond immediate tactical concerns. As they approached the Land of Iron's neutral territory, where samurai rather than shinobi maintained order, Naruto sensed they were crossing a threshold not just geographically but historically. Whatever emerged from the Five Kage summit would shape the shinobi world for generations to come, either establishing new foundations for cooperation or confirming that even existential threats couldn't overcome centuries of ingrained rivalry and suspicion. The distinctive angular architecture of the samurai stronghold emerged through swirling snow as they reached their destination, a fortress designed not for hidden operations but for open defense, reflecting the different philosophical approach of samurai compared to shinobi. General Mifune, leader of the Land of Iron Samurai, had agreed to host and moderate the summit precisely because his nation maintained strict neutrality in shinobi conflicts. As they approached the fortress gates, they observed delegations from other villages already arriving, the distinctive attire of Sunigeki representatives accompanying Gaara, the imposing figures of Kumo shinobi surrounding the Reikage, the elderly but still formidable Tsuchikage, Anoki, with his protective escorts, and the elegant procession of Kiri ninja accompanying the new Mizukage, Mei Terumi. It begins, Tsunade observed quietly as they were escorted toward the central meeting chamber. The first true test of whether the shinobi world can evolve beyond its founding limitations. Naruto, walking slightly behind the official delegation as previously arranged, felt the weight of historical significance in every step. The Sage of Six Paths had created Nishu, the predecessor to modern ninjutsu, as a means of connecting people through shared chakra understanding. Somewhere along the centuries-long path from that original vision to the current shinobi system, that fundamental purpose had been lost. Perhaps, he reflected as they entered the imposing summit chamber with its 5 elevated seats for the Kage, this gathering represented an opportunity to reconnect with that original intention, not just to counter Tobi's immediate threat, but to address the systemic imbalances that had allowed such threats to repeatedly emerge from the shadows of their supposedly civilized world.